Hello and welcome back to another episode of A Weekly Waypoint, the show where I check out a game and talk about my week. Today is the final Weekly Waypoint you will be receiving from me in my 20s, which is just not on really, is it? I didn't agree to this whole aging process when I first entered the world. I didn't choose to be born into a universe where entropy ran down, or did I? That wasn't in the contract. Today we are playing more Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 3, which is a bit of a weird one in terms of what I normally do for a retrospective, because normally we only spend 1 week with each game. But last week I decided that I enjoyed this game too damn much, and I wanted to play every single track. That includes both the final 3 tracks we had remaining, and also every single secret track included in the game which you unlock by changing your username. At least in the PS1 version. I don't know if there's different tracks in the different versions of the games. And as I was playing through each course, by the way, I realised that there were several shortcuts I was going past, and usually it would take me 1 lap to notice it and a second lap to kind of go, oh, I should take that corner, oh, maybe I'm not gonna, and then that's the end of a race. But yeah, Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 3, if you didn't join us last week, just a quick recap, as we have been playing through every single Need for Speed on PS1 so far, Need for Speed 3 Hot Pursuit is the one that's really grabbed me, the one that I really get the sense that if I had played it during its era, if I had received this game as a kid, it would probably be one of my favourite racing games of all time. And by the way, I love it when racing games do a little underwater segment like this one is currently doing. This made me smile so much as I was going underneath it. I love shit like this. My favourite thing about these older Need for Speed games continues to be track design, as opposed to more modern ones which are more realistic. And indeed, as you will see from the bonus tracks, and you will know when we reach the bonus tracks, by the way, yeah, these games aren't too concerned with being very realistic. I stand by what I said in the past, which is I would kill for a Need for Speed game or an arcade-style racing game which is set in various like science fiction or fantasy places. Like, who cares if it makes sense? Just make something cool and fun. We're playing video games, and while realism is definitely something that's fun and interesting in its own right, it's also not something that we should really force upon ourselves to bar ourselves from having some fun. If the Forza Horizon series is allowed to periodically have DLCs where they create giant Hot Wheels parks or giant Lego areas, then I'm sure we can figure something out in that department. I don't know if Need for Speed would be the franchise to do it nowadays, but I don't know, you could always create like a spin-off Need for Speed series. I'm sure people would be intelligent enough to grasp that. But yeah, to talk about the bonus tracks, which we'll be seeing in a bit, I was expecting a little bit more from them. I was expecting, I don't know why, but I was expecting them to be like fully fledged tracks like the one you're seeing now. But they seem to be more like these little developer bonus things. You can imagine they were using them to like test out physics and stuff. There's no ability to race other drivers on those tracks. There's no soundtracks on those tracks either. They're pretty quiet. They're basically just these little time trials. They are fun though. A couple of them are a little boring, don't get me wrong, but like the themes are pretty fun for each one, and just racing on the tracks themselves are pretty fun. My favourite one is the, oh god, what's it called? Scorpio X7 or something track. It's the final one you'll be seeing, and it is set completely underwater. At least as far as I can tell it is. And yeah, I wonder like about the modability of the PC version of this game. Were people able to create their own tracks back in the day? I did get a comment last week from someone saying that they modded their own vehicles into the game, which was really cool. And by the way, thank you for all your attention on last week's video. It did really well as far as the weekly waypoint goes, and it was really cool to see so many people engaging with it and having fun kind of using it to revisit their nostalgia for this game. That being said, I don't think I really have too much else to add to last week's thoughts, so we're just going to let the gameplay play out and talk about other things, like what I've been playing this week. I'm still very much in World of Warcraft country. Last week I talked about how I've just been chilling in that game, farming old raids for transmogs and for old mounts and stuff like that. And I have been continuing to do that. I did finally step foot into the latest patch content zone Undermine, although while I was surprised to find out how pretty it looks, despite being all goblin themed and stuff, the narrative isn't really doing much for me so far. Obviously, you know, it might change. We're still very much in the, like, here's the hook, but the hook isn't hooking, so... But I'll continue to wade through that until something interesting happens, I'm sure. However, most of my World of Warcraft efforts this week have been in Cataclysm Classic once again, because they finally announced when the pre-patch for the Mists of Pandaria Classic expansion goes live, which is pretty much exactly a month from today. I think it's July 1st or 2nd or 3rd or something like that. And alongside the announcement of the pre-patch release date incoming, which if you're not aware of World of Warcraft, by the way, the pre-patch basically means it's the patch of the expansion. It just doesn't include the expansion content. So you can't go to Pandaria, you can't level from 85 onwards, but you can make a Pandaren and play through the new Pandaren starting zone, and you can make monks. The new talent system and the pruning of certain abilities will be implemented, that kind of thing. But they do this pretty cool thing on classic servers where what they do is they kind of like announce the pre-patch patch like a month ahead of time, and then they include like a 50% XP buff for the month leading up to that patch. And I am someone who has never had a max level World of Warcraft classic character, but has always kind of wanted to. So for the first and probably only time in my life, I got a boost, because I'm desperate to play Mists of Pandaria Classic, and I do not think that my attention span will hold out to get me leveled up. I don't agree with the price, but hey, I was able to, and like I said, I'm turning 30, so I have no regrets. So I now have a level 85 mage, Runari. She's an arcane mage because I played a lot of arcane mage back in Mists of Pandaria, and I've been kind of like getting myself acquainted with the Cataclysm endgame because that's not something I've ever really dealt with. The Mists of Pandaria endgame is similar, but it's subtly different, especially since in Cataclysm Classic they actually had some new to classic stuff, like they've got harder versions of heroic dungeons which award little bits of currency to cobble together some better gear. Also, for some reason, they did not implement looking for raid for Dragon Soul like they said they were going to, so I am not able to do LFR, sadly, which is the only raiding experience I will ever bother with. That's right, I'm an LFR Andy, unapologetically. I am not a single game person, I am not a very social person, and even though I have found a nice guild and stuff, I just know that if I say I'm gonna join a raid team after 2 or 3 weeks of it, I'm gonna be bored and then I'm gonna let people down by leaving. But like I say, I have been playing some heroic dungeons. Heroic dungeons in Cataclysm are quite intricate affairs, actually. You really do have to pay attention to the boss mechanics in a way that you usually don't in dungeons in WoW. I'm looking to build up enough justice badges, or I guess they're called justice points in this version of the game, to start buying heirlooms for other characters and stuff. However, that's not all I've been doing. I have actually been leveling with the XP buff as well on some alts, and now that I don't have that kind of deadline hanging over me, kind of paradoxically, now I'm actually having a much better time leveling. I decided to dig up Unor the Unearthed, who is my Death Knight dwarf, and I've been playing him a little bit. I've just been mashing through dungeons, just spamming dungeon queues and stuff, and he's currently level 71. I'm having a really good time playing on him, actually. Normally Death Knight isn't my jam, but for some reason it's kind of vibing with me right now. I don't know if I'll get him to level 85 before the pre-patch or before Mists. I don't know if I even care enough to plan to, but I am enjoying leveling him up for now. My main thing, if I'm honest, the main thing in the back of my head that it has me slightly concerned about, like, you know, investing in the World of Warcraft Classic servers is just that the future of Classic after Mists is uncertain. I've already been quite vocal about the fact that I would like them to continue into Warlords of Draenor and Legion and BFA and stuff, and I don't know if Classic would be the right term for those game servers going onwards, but I do think that they should continue them and have, like, the ability to play through every expansion, no matter how well or badly received it was, because honestly, Warlords of Draenor, when you change the content cadence and you go in with these lower expectations, just those two things alone will do wonders for that expansion experience, because it still had a great leveling experience, it had great zones, it had an interesting story which ended badly because they were rushing the expansion at that point. But I still think people would enjoy Warlords Classic a lot more than they think they would. And I think Cataclysm Classic has set a precedent that people will go and play these expansions which have bad reputations in Classic form and have a good time doing so. But I am a little worried that even if they do go ahead with Warlords Classic in a couple of years, it still sounds like a meme when even I say it out loud who's advocating for it. I'm just worried that maybe the player base will fall off and so on and so forth. So yeah, I feel a little silly putting so much time into these classic characters when I know that maybe it will end with Mists of Pandaria. Like, I'm sure the servers would be up in perpetuity because they've sold in-game microtransactions on those servers and people are attached to their characters and stuff like that, but you do have to wonder what are they going to do from this point onwards. Also, the fact that these classic expansions have like slightly shorter runtimes to the original versions of them doesn't help to the feeling of time dilation that you get as you age, because I'm like, oh my god, it feels like Classic launched yesterday with vanilla, but that was 2019, which means that it has been 6 years since the launch of WoW Classic, which means that if we were going by normal expansion standards, we should be starting Cataclysm Classic right now instead of ending it. And it's just barely enough to really throw your sense of time off balance when you try to compare it to the original time period of the game. But yeah, I've been leveling Unor the Unearthed. That's just my kind of lore headcanon title for him, by the way. That's not a real title. He's just called Unor. UNOR. I also leveled Desmodius a little bit, who was my Burning Crusade Fury Warrior. Although I feel like leveling Unor and Desmodius back to back is a little too much melee action. I've also been leveling my professions on Runari because unfortunately with Mists you do have to level your professions up through every expansion to get to the most recent one. I can't remember when they changed that, probably Battle for Azeroth. But yeah, I'm just having a really good time in World of Warcraft right now. I'm enjoying playing Classic for the moment. I'm going to be enjoying doing time walking dungeon events in retail when they come back around in a couple of days. And there's also like this tumultuous Timeways event that they're doing that I've never done before. That's like a big time walking event that sounds really fun to do, that I want lots of rewards out of. And then I'll play Miss Classic when that comes out, and then who knows what's going to happen when 11.2 is announced. And yeah, I'm just in a big World of Warcraft mood right now. I'm very invested, and I'm having a lot of fun with it. I said last week that I am enjoying WoW more than I have since The War Within came out. That's not a big time span, that's not a big amount of patches to really reflect on. I think probably the more important thing to say is I'm more invested in WoW, like in my characters and going out and collecting transmogs and playing different versions of the game. I'm more invested in World of Warcraft than I have been probably since Shadowlands. And obviously it would have been waning during Shadowlands because Shadowlands was Shadowlands. But honestly, even though Dragonflight was a good expansion and I did enjoy it, I wasn't really invested in the game in the same way that I am right now back then. So yeah, I'm really, really into WoW in a way that I haven't been in years right now. They've been improving on the game for a long time at this point, and I think I'm finally in a headspace where I'm able to sit down and reap the rewards of those benefits. Whereas before I would play with them and go, oh yeah, it's nice that you can now collect transmogs for every class. Now I'm actually in the mood to sit down and go and collect all those transmogs for every class in single runs of raids, you know what I mean? Like, instead of reacting to the trading poster going, oh, that's kind of cool that that's a thing and that you can get this with it, and I guess I just happen to have Tender or whatever. Now I'm actively looking forward to seeing the next month's trading post, and I'm like, oh man, what am I going to get out of it? I guess that's what I mean when I say I'm invested in a game. But it's not the only game I've been playing this week. Last week, after recording my thoughts on Dragon Quest Day, I did eventually just decide to boot up Dragon Quest Builders 2. Now, I have played a little bit of Dragon Quest Builders 2 back when it was on Game Pass, but I picked up Builders 2 alongside Builders 1 when it was on sale last year for Dragon Quest Day. And while I enjoyed my time playing Dragon Quest Builders 1, I did end up hitting a snag where, for some reason, and this was in like the second chapter of the game, the quest markers telling me where to go, they were just leading me to dead ends the entire time, and I was looking it up and I couldn't figure it out, and it wasn't to do with teleportals either. I was checking every island I had access to via teleportals, and I just could not figure it out, and I was just getting frustrated, and it put me off playing the game. And eventually this week I decided, you know what? let's just play Builders 2. Dragon Quest Builders 2 is a fantastic sequel to the original game, because the original game is a fantastic concept, but Builders 2 just kind of improves upon it in every way. I haven't got too far through it yet. When I was playing it on Game Pass, I got to like the second main area, and I'm still working my way through the first, being Furrowfield Farm. But it's just so charming. It is absolutely packed with charm. Every character, every bit of dialogue, the art style, of course, the soundtrack, it's just a delight. And just like with Builders 1, I love the kind of questing process of like, you know what we could really use? We could really use a barn. You can make a barn by putting these objects in like a small room. Can you go make a barn? And I'm like, okay, I'll go make a barn. I don't know why I keep saying barn like this. And it's fun because unlike Minecraft, and obviously I love Minecraft, it's objective-driven creativity, because how the barn ends up looking is largely up to you. You have a blueprint to follow, you have vague schematics to follow, but you choose where to build it, you choose what shape to build it in, you choose what materials kind of to build it out of, and then to kind of like see your own creativity reflected in the world and how the characters react to it is genuinely, I think, the kind of gameplay experience that is hard to find. It's quite a unique coming together of different gameplay elements, and it's so good, and I wish they had announced Builders 3. But yeah, just to follow up on what I said last week about Dragon Quest Day, we didn't really get much this year out of Dragon Quest Day. As I said, we might not, because it is a single franchise, and you know, Dragon Quest Day is more about celebrating Dragon Quest, and it just so happens to have announcements sometimes. This year we got a hard release date for Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD 2D, and we got some more screenshots and a little bit more information about it, and it obviously has also got me thinking I really do need to finish 3 before 1 and 2 come out in October 30th, I think. So that is going to be an objective of mine, although I did, of course, go and immediately get distracted by Builders 2, but let's not worry about that. I also decided to check out Metaphor Refantazio as it dropped on Game Pass this week. I'm not very far through it, but I have got to certain points in the narrative which have grabbed my attention. Something I'm starting to realise about myself is I am a sucker for a fantasy world, which really makes me go, how did we get here? How did we get to this point where this is what's normal to you people? And there is something unanswered in your past that has some complex reason for how you got to this point in your world. And Metaphor Refantazio is one of those fantasy worlds. Fantasy worlds which incite curiosity in me, that are more than just, here is a fantasy protagonist, he is but a simple farmer boy, except it turns out that he is the chosen one. The Empire comes and razes his village to the ground, and he must set out on a... It's like, okay, yeah, I've done that. Give me something different, give me something new. And when you make the world itself a mystery as to like the state that it's in and how it got there, that is something that very much grabs my attention. I do just want to make a small note here, by the way. I've talked about this on the Weekly Waypoint before, but I am aware that I keep starting games. Specifically, I keep starting RPGs, and I obviously never finish them because I keep seeing new releases and I keep going and starting those and playing those and so on and so forth. I've always had this problem with video games in general, but in my 20s, I suppose, I've gotten really into RPGs specifically, and that problem becomes much more pronounced because suddenly these are hardcore narrative games that you are abandoning at like the end of the first act or earlier. I'm starting to wonder if I shouldn't take a similar approach to how I deal with reading books and how I got back into reading books this year or last year or whatever, and actually making an active effort to stick to a game, and if I see another game I find interesting, forcing myself to leave it alone and put it on like a kind of TBR. The reason I've never tried this seemingly obvious solution is I just do not have the confidence that I will be able to carry it out, and I worry that I will turn gaming into a chore for myself and I won't have a fun time. But maybe it's something I should really make an active effort to do, or to start, or to try. I think somewhere I could start is by trying to really make sure that I finish Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D before 1 and 2 come out in October. But it's something that I actually have become a little self-conscious about talking about it in the Weekly Waypoint. I'm just aware that I've got this monument to my distractibility, and while it's not really important, nobody else really cares about how I play video games, when I'm out here like, oh, I really want to play this game, I do get the impression that someone might raise an eyebrow and go, do you? Or do you want to play the first 5 hours of that game? So yeah, I'm not sure how I'm going to attempt this yet. Maybe I'll have like a game that I am quote-unquote playing through, and then I will allow myself to have my distracted offshoots, but I will always have to have that one game that I am quote-unquote playing through. It's the kind of problem that I don't have to let be a problem. I can have an active attempt at trying to fix it. And so yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll do that. I'm not announcing anything. I'm not announcing this grand incentive to finish games or anything like that, but it's definitely something that I'm thinking about. And you know what? Dragon Quest III will be the first one of it. Because I see my friend Reese sometimes. I see him like, oh wow, this Claire Obscure Expedition 33 game has come out and people are raving about it and it's on Game Pass. I'm going to play it. And then like a few weeks later, he's like, I finished it. It's really good. And I'm like, oh, that's nice. I wish I could be like that. I haven't even started it because I don't want it to be yet another game that I just start and immediately abandon. Now, Summer Games Fest is upon us alongside all the non-E3 gaming presentations, which usually follow in their wake. I have spent entire weekly waypoints or videos of their own right before making predictions about what might be announced and things that I would like to see. I'm just going to make brief mention of it here this time around because honestly, I'm really... As I mentioned, I think last week or the week before, I'm not really in the market for new games. I'm kind of cool. I've kind of got stuff I could be getting on with, if I'm being honest. There's nothing I can really think of that I'm desperate to see announced or revealed in this upcoming season of gaming conferences and stuff. However, I will say I do always enjoy watching them, and I am excited to see whatever they're going to throw at us this year. The one thing that I do have on my mind, obviously being invested in World of Warcraft right now, is that maybe they will announce 11.2 during the Xbox Game Showcase, which I'm not sure if it would be the best place to announce it, but it is always a possibility. That is in fact the main reason why I finally set foot in Undermine yesterday, because I was like, if they're going to announce the next portion of the story, I should probably be up to date on the story. People seem to think 11.2 is going to be set on the ethereal homeworld, and as someone who has always wanted to see them do more with the ethereals in this game, that's pretty exciting to me. I hope that that's right. Also, the World of Warcraft Midnight expansion reveal is set for a summer reveal on the roadmap that they set out for us, and we are technically in summer now at the start of June. At least I think we are. I know there are some crazy people who say it's not until like July 31st or some shit. I ignore those people. I think it would be a little too early to reveal the Midnight expansion at this stage, but I think they have announced a 0.2 or a 0.3 patch and an expansion at the same time before. And BlizzCon 2025, I've just googled it now, was cancelled. Actually, wait, that's the AI overview. Hang on, can't trust that shit. Let me drill down. Okay, yeah, 2026. So that is something that if it was announced, I would imagine it being announced during the Xbox portion. So that would be curious. Alongside maybe finally a console release for World of Warcraft, that might be cool. I can tell you what is going to happen though. There is going to be a big controversy with the Midnight expansion reveal because people don't seem to have cottoned on to the fact that yes, housing is being released into the game before Midnight comes out, as per the roadmap, but I don't think people have realized that you will clearly have to pre-order Midnight in order to gain access to it because it is a box feature of Midnight. I keep hearing people go, oh, the devs keep referring to player housing in WoW as like a Midnight feature, but it's coming out before Midnight. We don't understand this. And I'm like, yeah, they always need something to sell the pre-orders. So you're going to be able to play it before Midnight by pre-ordering Midnight, and that's why it's a box feature, and people are going to be upset about that, I guarantee you. I've become a cynic because I'm also this is coming from the same place where I'm like, I'm not looking forward to the Elder Scrolls 6 being announced or being released, I guess, because everyone's going to hate it because they've built it up in their minds, and you know, games have to be incredible nowadays for people to not universally hate on it, so hey. But hey, I actually saw in the wild a thread about Starfield the other day, and it was nothing but positivity and people being excited about it and hoping that Xbox announced some new DLC for it. So hey, I think maybe the discourse poisoning might finally be subsiding. healing might be taking place, and we might be allowed to enjoy Starfield now as Starfield enjoyers. And yeah, I guess maybe that's something I'm hoping to see as well. I want to see more DLC for Starfield, or there's this rumor of this grand rework to the game to address a lot of the very valid criticisms that people do have about it. And I think that could be really cool to see too. Starfield 2.0. Make it happen, Xbox. Also, for the record, no, I still don't think we're going to see The Elder Scrolls 6 yet. I think we're still too soon. My main issue is the things I would like to see announced at an Xbox event have kind of happened and been announced. Like the Oblivion remake, or remaster, sorry, that happened. That's already happened. The Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4, we already know about that. We already know the release date. We already know that's happening. Hell, the Gears of War prequel that I'm mildly interested in, we already know that's a thing. Maybe we'll see some of it, but yeah, I guess I want to see Fable. Show me Fable. Are we at the point in the timeline where we get Forza Horizon 6? Maybe not, because the people who headed up 4 and 5 have now left. I don't know. I don't think Xbox have a lot of unknowns at their fringes that I'm really locked into right now. We should probably also talk about the fact that between this weekly waypoint and next weekly waypoint, Nintendo Switch 2 will release. I'm not someone who is blessed with the funds to get myself a Switch 2, but it's a notable thing happening within the gaming space anyway, and I felt like making mention of it. I was grappling with whether or not I would try and scrounge up the ability to get a Switch 2 for my 30th, because I don't exactly have any relatives who are flushed with enough dosh to make that a present for me, which is perfectly fine, by the way, because I have relatives who I love dearly and I would take that any day over rich relatives. But yeah, speaking of Forza, Mario Kart World is basically Forza Horizon now, and I think that looks pretty cool. I don't know, with wage increases, or I guess national minimum wage increases, and the overtime I've been working lately and stuff, there is every possibility that I might be able to just pull the fuck it and like grab a Switch 2 in the coming months, but I think it's also equally as likely that I won't get it for a decent bit, so we'll see how things go. You'll know if I get one because I'll make a big deal about it on the channel. But as I've said before, ultimately, as long as I get the Switch 2 within the first few years of its lifespan, I think I'm good. But I suppose in a similar vein of, I guess, things to talk about, the Pokemon Presents. I'm a little bit late to this news, I fear, but a Pokemon Presents has been announced for like the end of July, which is super weird because normally Nintendo Directs and Pokemon Presents get announced like a day or two before they happen. I can't help but wonder why the hell they're announcing a Pokemon Presents so far out ahead of time. I mean, we still don't have a release date for Pokemon Legends ZA, and that is kind of like the main Pokemon thing at the minute, so maybe there'll be a trailer there and they'll announce it there, but like, I don't know, why? Why tell us about Pokemon Presents so far ahead of time? Feels kind of silly to speculate about what might be in it at this point. I saw some people talking about maybe they're going to start bringing the mainline Pokemon games over to NSO, but I think that's definitely something they would save for an anniversary, and there is an anniversary coming up for Pokemon next year. Pokemon will be celebrating its 30th anniversary in 2026. I can't imagine turning 30, that's kind of huge. They must be feeling really old and self-conscious about their age right now. But also, maybe since they're announcing the Pokemon Presents so far ahead of time, they want to get people talking about it and speculating. Maybe they'll announce Gen 10? I don't know. I haven't really been keeping up to date on, like, the Pokemon time frame. Maybe that's too early. Maybe it would be the right time if they were rushing it out just like they did with Gen 9 and Gen 8. Maybe we don't want them to be announcing Gen 10 in July. I don't know. Gen 5 remakes? Shrug. Or because when it comes to Nintendo and Nintendo-related properties, I find that they are so unpredictable because they just do whatever the hell they feel like doing. I feel like people, and this is kind of an unkind thought I've had just as a warning, I feel like people waste so much time and effort trying to predict and understand Nintendo when Nintendo doesn't seem to notice the people that it's catering to or care about what they think or want. And it could just be that someone was like, oh, we've got a Pokemon Present scheduled for July, I'll just post about it. It might mean absolutely nothing. They might have not have given it a second thought themselves. I don't know. I guess we'll find out in, what, like 8 weekly waypoints? That would also just be 8 weeks for the uninitiated. The last thing I want to talk to you about today is just something that I do every now and again on a weekly waypoint. It's a returning section which ebbs and wanes and comes back and disappears again. Sometimes I like to talk to you about what I've been reading, what I've been setting my scrawny little eyeballs on. Or earlobes. Oh, wait, no, hang on, you don't listen to things with your earlobes. I mean, for that front, I'm still listening through the second era of Mistborn. Nothing too much new there. As far as reading goes, I kind of put aside the Sun Eater novella I was reading, Dregs of Empire, just because I really haven't started it yet or gotten very far into it. It's yet to really hook me, and I am kind of trying to space out my Sun Eater reading speed so that I don't have to wait as long for the final book. So I have tactfully... right, this was according to plan, allowed myself to be distracted by Star Wars Legends. I don't think I talked about this last week. A couple weeks ago, I went down a massive fixation rabbit hole on Star Wars Legends. Because I've never read any Star Wars Legends novels or comics or anything like that. But for those of you who don't know, Star Wars Legends is what it was called the Extended Universe before Disney decanonized it. I swear I talked about this. But anyway, there's a whole bunch of Star Wars Legends books that I want to read. And I realised that the Darth Plagueis ebook was like £1.50, and I was like... yeah, sure. So I've started reading Darth Plagueis. It's not a story of a Jedi would tell me, but yeah, that could be a fun read, I think. But the main thing I want to talk to you about today is I have discovered Nightwing. I'm still reading through a bunch of DC comics, and after reading some Teen Titans stuff, I wanted to read about the origins of Nightwing. And so I went and I did that, and I read both the comic series where he first decides to don the mantle of Nightwing, and I read Nightwing Year 1, which is more of a modern retelling of his origin story. Pretty good limited series, I would recommend it for anyone curious about the character. I did follow Nightwing's story from there on into Bloodhaven, but it wasn't really vibing with me, so I decided just to jump ahead to Nightwing Rebirth, because I am continuously finding that the Rebirth era of DC Comics just seems to jive with me. And I know that during the New 52 era, which I also tend to like, Nightwing wasn't really a thing. It was more just Dick Grayson being like a secret agent for a spy agency, which isn't really up my alley. But yeah, I've been reading the Rebirth era of Nightwing, and I've been really enjoying it. I think Nightwing is such a fascinating hero because obviously it's the evolution of the original Robin character, and you don't see characters in DC Comics or Marvel Comics for that matter really like evolve and change in that way. In fact, that's definitely one thing DC Comics does overall better than Marvel, is the whole Bat Family thing and like the kind of the canon of the story happening over the decades and the different Robins and where they came from in their stories and so on and so forth. And it's just a really cool concept, like Robin growing up, striking out on his own, forging his own identity, the tone of his story of course changing as he matures into an adult, and also just seeing the world through his eyes instead of through Batman's eyes, and the idea of whether Batman does things the right way or not, or if there are other ways to solve problems, and like his legacy and his identity and all that stuff. It's just good. It's just really good. It's really interesting. As a long-time Batman fan, it's really fun to spend so much time with Nightwing, and how Nightwing exists almost as a criticism of Batman's often black and white view of the world and the way he deals with criminals and so on. And while I do enjoy Batman comics, it's also nice reading Nightwing because, you know, he quips sometimes. He's quite funny. He says the occasional joke. He's no Spider-Man, but he's definitely a little bit more relatable than our billionaire, grumpy Batman is. And yeah, this is just part of me in general wanting to branch out and read more DC comic heroes. Like I definitely got stuck on the Flash for a long time because I was like, I wonder what's going on with the Flash, and then I really liked the Flash. But then also I want to read some Batgirl, I want to read some Supergirl, I want to read like these quote-unquote peripheral characters who have their own series and kind of like see the world through their eyes. And yeah, I think that'd be pretty cool. I'm also want to continue the Teen Titans and Titans as well. I gather that they're kind of like two different titles. You've got the original Teen Titans team who aren't teens anymore, obviously. Since kind of coming to terms with the idea that I think I prefer DC Comics over Marvel Comics, despite loving them both, I really have settled into the DC Comics universe quite happily. But also, as I mentioned at the end of last week, I wanted to check out some Spider-Man 2099, like the more modern stuff. And I did start doing that, but unfortunately it didn't really grab me. I still haven't started the 2014 run, but I looked up the character in the app to see what happened between the run I finished and the 2014 run, and it's just kind of like a hodgepodge of various little limited series, and he's not always the main character in them and stuff, and I don't know how I feel about that, but nothing I've read has recaptured it so far, so maybe I should just jump to the 2014 series, as that was written by the original Peter David, of course. But anyway, that's going to do it for me. Thank you very much for watching this episode of the Weekly Waypoint. I will be back with you next week on my birthday. I will record and schedule it ahead of time, of course. And we'll be playing the next game in the series. Oh, and happy Pride. Unfortunately, I had a run-in with some phobics in a WoW creators community, and I think they existed there purely because he never made a stance on that kind of stuff or any, active moderation, so I just want to throw that out there and say, hey, yeah, if anyone's not aware, I'm bi, and if you got a problem with that, shove off. But, yay! Anyway...